the intro music. Yeah! Woo!
Today seems like a good day as any to talk about Mr. Admiral Picard. Pick Admiral Picard, the weird little introduction thingy right here. I really wish they would have called him Legacy, but maybe they can't call him Legacy because that could be a new name of a Star Trek show coming out at some point. Spoilers. Technically not a spoiler because that's not confirmed, but it has been discussed. Definitely a lot. More Star Trek coming. Yay. So, besides regular Star Trek, like really growing its catalog, let's talk about Star Trek Fleet Command. And we've got this new set of officers. We got Admiral Picard, we've got Captain Riker, and then we've got, this old man Worf. We're going to word them that way because we got a lot of copies of officers in the game now. So the real question is this guy worth it? I chose today of all days to go over because, well, for those that don't know, nobody lied to us. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, you get to decide in the comment section down below. But I told y'all very clearly that they weren't adding anything to the event store. And I was told that by multiple employees. Only for them to change their minds and decide that they wanted to run this Picard special. Now, real quick, I'll cover this, even though this video is meant to talk mostly about Picard himself. Is this worth it? Personally, I don't think so. If this does help you unlock Jean-Luc Picard from like 2 years ago, sure, go for it. But generally speaking, no, this is not a super valuable one. I'm really close to Admiral Picard, and I'm even going, It's just honestly not a great deal. If it gets you the unlock, cool. But other than that, I'm not real big on it. So let's talk about Picard himself and how he works and why he might be a good officer for you, but it depends on several different factors. So he is part of a long line of niche officers, niche PvP officers to be specific. And when I say niche, that's exactly what I mean. He's very specific in how he works. So let's take a look at his officer ability. Admiral Picard increases your ship. Some people have been confused about this. Your ship's weapons damage by 500% when fighting an explorer. So you can put it on whatever you want. It could be on a battleship, it could be on your interceptor, but it can only have the big bonus fighting the baddies in this case, which are going to be explorers. So very niche. You've got to know that you're fighting an Enterprise, or know that you're fighting a Coronar, or know that you're fighting a Corvus. And then it's, okay, how long does it take to be effective? Now, this is where our friends over at STFC Space come in, and we can see how it grows. Now, we'll say that if you can get him tiered up, very, very powerful here, maxing out at 3,000%. Now, by the time my viewers, or the average player, gets it to 3,000%, that percentage probably won't mean anything anymore. But for now, that's actually very impressive. And you can actually find some use for 500% in the game, but it's far more specific in how we're looking. And really, tier 3 is the minimum before I give him the Rev Deuce check of approval. We can effectively and rely on him, or use him in the game. But here, real quick, we're going to actually take this down, recycle on over, because I want to take a look at the captain's ability. At the start of each round, Admiral Picard has a 90% chance to apply morale for 3 rounds, and he can max out with full sin higher than that. So you do have another morale officer starter here. Granted, he's got to be a captain, but another morale officer starter is certainly welcome. That's not a bad addition to the game, so I'm not really going to get mad. Like, I'm not going to just go over and be like, well, damn scope lead. Yeah, I'm actually not really upset about it at all. It's kind of whatever, right? So more morale, fine. It's mostly the officer ability that we're going to focus on, and just to kind of put it back up there, if you do full synergy, you can, in theory, take it to 100% if you just wanted to make sure that your ship had morale. The only ship that probably matters on that you would want to guarantee morale is the Enterprise, which, using the Enterprise as an example, why don't we take a look at a couple of logs with Admiral Picard. Now, I don't have him, so I've had to outsource through the community, and I'm just going to show you 2 basic examples of using it in a fight. So here's an Enterprise versus an Enterprise, a max Enterprise versus a not max Enterprise, one on the right running full Explorer Strike Team, one on the left with Admiral Picard, Lorca, and Honor Guard Worf. That's a critical build. Very common PvP run that we would all run. So there's nothing negative about this. I'm not going to have anything bad to say about it. It is what it is. It's not like jump up and down crazy, What I'm trying to say is you can see for yourself that it doesn't win. What I will say, though, is it does a significant amount of damage to a layout that we've kind of been talking about being OP for a while, the strike teams. So you do see that you actually put out significant damage. The critical build worked, even though you're running against, Pan and Ikatika and Wayun. It is an effective run. You don't win, but it works. Now let's compare it to another PvP run where this is a standard kind of PvP crew on the right side, Marcus, Yuki, and then Khan. That's a pretty standard generic PvP crew. Same thing, dominates, does a really good job against an Enterprise that, yes, 2 tiers lower, but still, generally speaking, does really well. Now, the Enterprise is going to have a natural advantage over Yuki, especially a max one. And I realize the battles I'm showing you are not necessarily perfect examples, but they're meant to just show, can he be effective? And this is a baby Admiral Picard, which when you talk about how to best use Admiral Picard, it's definitely around critical builds. That's got to be the obvious answer, because critical builds are naturally taking the damage modifiers that you've had, the big damage you can create, and then multiplying on top of that. So the more that you can put into a battle log for damage, the better a critical run will be. So if I was to say, pop open this boat real quick, let's swap over and pull out my Max Enterprise. We'll talk about critical builds. Well, right here, I've got a 22% critical chance at my level. I've done all that research and everything, and a 295. So basically a factor of 3. So anything that improves my damage, I'm then going to multiply that by 3 if I'm hitting a critical. Now, what is the drawback to this strategy? And this technically applies to all 3 of the new officers, Riker, Worf, and Picard. This problem with that is anti-critical builds. So you're naturally going to want to take all 3 of those and focus on criticals. And there's nothing wrong with that logic. In fact, that's the logical next step when you look at a damage modifier. Okay, cool. How are we going to make that even better? Critical runs. Now, in theory, if you had an Admiral Picard that was 3,000%, maybe you don't even need to consider criticals because you can put out so much big damage immediately. But I want to remind y'all of officers like Damar, Liquid Courage, when in a hull breach, scores a critical hit, decreases critical hit damage by 29%. That's just based on mine at tier 2. But as that stacks, basically your critical build now does nothing. So you have all these anti-crit sets, including stuff that you see in the Explorer and Interceptor, etc. strike team. Just the strike teams in general are still the meta, right? Like, this didn't come in and really change anything. And I'm not saying that these are bad. I do still think that the strike team is good. Pan is a card that we keep talking about in a positive way. We like Pan. Pan is good. But this lowers your critical hit chance. So both of the strike teams, specifically the Explorer strike team, like if you wanted to gear against an Explorer, well, it's automatically built to stop that strategy. So now it's, okay, well, maybe we're running Yuki Marcus Admiral Picard, like going old school, going piercing, shield strip, and Admiral Picard for pure damage. And yeah, that can work. And I guess what they're trying to do is do a huge stat overload with these officers and then find you that happy medium between the old PvP meta and the new one, which is strike team, and then this is smack in the middle. But the problem with anything that you make smack in the middle is it struggles to get people to be excited about it. I mean, it's not as cool as like the cool t-shirts I make in my merch store. It's just, yeah, would I like to have him? Sure. But again, you need so many tiers before he finally becomes very effective, at least effective enough to where you can kind of just generically put him out there and know you're going to fight and win and explore. And then after that, it's just kind of meh. Like, sure, he works. Sure, he could be good. But will he ever be a primary PvP officer for you? Unlikely. More likely than not, you're going to focus on getting the strike teams through incursions. And yes, incursions are still happening. For some reason, somebody came to me in a live stream like, hey, Rev, somebody told me incursions are being canceled. Let me go ahead and tell you right now, they're not. And while I can't share a ton of information on that, we do talk about my Discord. I share a little bit here and there. No, it is not being canceled. Incursions is coming back. And I can't share any more information I have on that, but it's not going anywhere. So having more PvP crews, sure, makes sense. But it's not necessarily a great PvP officer. Just good. If this had come out and strike teams didn't exist, we would honestly be talking about Admiral Picard as probably one of the best PvP officers fighting explorers in the game. Right now, it's hard to just get really excited because this doesn't really help flip the strike teams. If you had a Max Picard, tier 3 maybe, then you're going against Explorer strike team, and we're changing up that theory a little bit. But sourcing is going to be the biggest issue. And as the time of making this video, there is no permanent sourcing for any of these new officers. All 3 of these new epics that have come out have no permanent sourcing. And until that happens, well, excitement will continue to be at the level that I currently have it at, which is close to none. I still like them. I have nothing against them. I think they're solid. But are they going to change your game in a positive way? Probably not. Unless you manage to, somehow get a ton of them. But I'm curious if you have Admiral Picard or Riker or Worf. How are you using them? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if this video helps you kind of get a better understanding of how Picard can work, if you do have him, well, give us a like. It helps the videos. It helps the channel. Just appreciate it. Live long and prosper. Stay safe with our space cowboys. Deuces, that's me. Catch you on the next video. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm outie.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.